Sorry, I sounded really boring, didn't I'm really sorry. I have no idea where to stand because I don't like standing behind lecterns, but equally, yeah. How are you? Have you survived today? My goodness, this must be about the most marathon conference in the history of conferences. So thank you for still being here. And I can already tell, because you're laughing, that you are lovely people. Is that right? Are you lovely people? Oh, you see, I knew it. So, welcome to your talk on ED and I. Now, normally, when a brown person, let's be honest, I am pretty brown, right? When a brown person comes up and stands in front of an audience like this to talk about equity, diversity, and inclusion, usually you get the talk. Now, the talk, for those of you who haven't experienced it yet, don't worry, you're not going to experience it today either, is about all of the difficulties that I've faced because I'm brown, or all the barriers I've had to overcome, and the racism that I've had to go through. And yes, I've been through all of that. I mean, when I was first in leadership, when David, where's David? I've lost him. When David was talking about my career, I mean, I first was in like senior executive leadership about 20 odd years ago. Honestly, mate, if you think it's bad now. Back then, it was a lot worse. So yes, I have been through those things. But I think one of the dangers of just saying, hello, here I am, I'm brown, here's my life, is that everybody makes an assumption. Oh, it's fine, I've heard the speech now, that's it. I've done it. I know what brown people go through. Thank God. Hallelujah, I know it now. The reality is, now here's a bit of a shocker. Are you ready for this? No two brown people are the same. Whoa, who would have thought it? Who would have thought it? And if you think by me sharing my experience of being brown with you, suddenly that's going to give you dramatic insights on how to create change on equity, diversity, and inclusion in your organization, I'm very, very sorry, but that doesn't work. And the other reason people do the talk is because there's some sort of weird, unspoken theory of change. Hello up there, by the way. Lovely to see. Oh, I got a wave. I like this audience. They think that somehow if you're not already motivated to think about and drive change on equity and diversity and inclusion, if only you can communicate the horror of racism and all the difficult things that we go through, that suddenly you will be motivated to jump out of your seats and run down the road screaming inclusion. Again, that doesn't work because, quite frankly, if since the murder of George Floyd, which is now, 3.5 years ago? 3.5 years ago, right? If you're not already motivated to create change on equity, diversity, inclusion, nothing I say is going to convince you otherwise. So, now, if you are one of those people who are secretly thinking, oh, for the love of Mike, another equity, diversity, inclusion talk. Oh, God, I've had it to the gills with this stuff. If that is you, do you know what? I'm going to give you formal, official permission to have a nap. Because quite frankly, what I'm about to say is not really relevant to you. It's only really relevant to people who are thinking, do you know what? I do genuinely care. I do genuinely want to create change. I want to drive greater equity, greater diversity, greater inclusion. If that's you, this talk is for you. Now, I have, how many minutes have I got left now? 12 minutes, something like 12 minutes. 12? 11? Around there, to tell you all about equity, diversity, and inclusion. That is like asking a neuroscientist with 30 years of experience on neuroscience to explain everything there is to know about neuroscience in 12 minutes. Ain't gonna happen, mate. Sorry. What I can do, hopefully, is light 1 or 2 little candles, which will create tiny pools of light, which hopefully will begin to guide you in the direction of the things you might think about and do to create change on equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I'm going to do that through the medium of 3 C's. Now, I don't mean those C's. Hopefully you can see that it means C as in the letter. And the first C I'm going to share with you is clarity. I have never worked or known of a field where there is so much wool in the thinking of people trying to create greater equity, diversity, and inclusion. It's like the whole EDI sector is made of wool, like a woolen doll dressed in a woolen jacket with a woolly hat and woolly mittens. And if you think that that's an exaggeration, it really, really isn't. When we go in and work with organisations, one of the first things we usually do is say, please share with us, tell us, what do you think the words equity, inclusion, diversity, anti-racism, if that's what you're working on, what do you think those words mean? And sometimes we might just ask that little pool of people that we're working with directly, the little working group. Sometimes, depending on the project, we might ask 2,000 staff members, what do you think it means? And as eggs is eggs, 50% of the people we ask, whether it's 2,000 or 10, about 50% will get it wrong. They will have misunderstood what those concepts of equity, diversity, and inclusion actually mean. And the other 50%, whether that's 1,000 or 5, will have different understandings from each other. And they are diligently, desperately trying to create change on equity, diversity, and inclusion and pulling in different directions. So surprisingly, they don't actually make progress. There's a shocker. So clarity is absolutely key if you are genuinely trying to create change. It's the equivalent, what happens in ED&I is the equivalent of some bosses of an organisation saying, team, we are moving east. And some people think, oh, finally, I get to lie on that beach in Bali. And other people are thinking, Uzbekistan? And actually what the bosses meant was, we're in Plymouth, we need to move to Brighton. And if you think that that's an exaggeration, it absolutely isn't. That is the approach that most organisations take to equity, diversity, inclusion. So C number 1, clarity. C number 2, commitment. Now, I know you're all lovely people because you smiled and you laughed and some of you even waved. And all of you will be thinking, I'm committed. I'm really committed. I want to create change. Ask yourself this question. In the last month, what 3 actions have I taken to create change on equity, diversity, and inclusion? You don't have to answer, by the way, just in case you're feeling nervous. I won't point at anyone. You can't have a talk about ED&I and not quote Mahatma Gandhi. Am I right? And Gandhi had loads of amazing quotes, right? But one of the quotes, which is probably the least well-known, but I really love, is actions express priority. Actions express priority. If you are not taking actions, it doesn't matter what you say, doesn't matter what you think, doesn't matter what you feel, it's not actually a priority. And I know what you're also thinking. You're thinking, well, do you know what? I'm not in control of my organisation's journey to greater equity, diversity, and inclusion. I don't write the strategy. I don't write the vision. I don't write the plans. I don't make the budgets available. Whatever it is that you think, no, but that's not me. It's not me. What I would say to you is everybody has a sphere of influence, a sphere of control. And you may not be able to set the vision for your organisation, but you absolutely can take action within your sphere of control. Even if it's as simple as, hi, manager person, I understand our organisation really wants to make change on equity, diversity and inclusion. Let me negotiate with you. What is it that you're expecting of me in contributing to that journey? How am I going to reprioritise my day-to-day tasks in order to make a bit of room to do the work that we need to do on equity, diversity and inclusion? If you yourself are a manager or a leader, how can I go out there and learn the right techniques to genuinely bring inclusion into how I do leadership? Spoiler alert, inclusion is not being friendly. If you don't know what inclusion is, come and find me in the reception. I'll tell you, it's not being friendly. So commitment, second C. How many Cs? Yes! You can read the screen behind me. I know, I get it. Okay, the third C of equity, diversity, and inclusion is courage. In working on equity, diversity, and inclusion with every client I've ever worked with ever on this topic, within about the first 5 seconds, maybe 5 minutes, but very early on in the conversation, the topic of fear comes up. Interestingly, it's always the non-minoritized people who are frightened. And I don't know what that's about. I think I have some theories, but that's another point. That's probably another lecture. So fear is one of the things that often stops people from taking action. But here's the thing about fear. The more you ignore it, the more you push it back there, I'll just pretend it's not there, I'll keep doing my job the way I've always done it. The more you do that, the bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger the monster of fear becomes. I am a bit of a personal development junkie, I'm not going to lie. One of the things I do, I'm chopping some vegetables, I'm sort of cleaning the kitchen, whatever it is I'm doing. There's usually some kind of podcast going on in the background, which I'm listening to as I'm doing my domestic duties. And I heard one about a couple of weeks ago, and I thought, oh my goodness, that is a revelation. That is literally ED&I in a nutshell. And this woman, who's a personal development guru, was talking about fear. And she described fear in this way. She said, fear, by the way, I'm plagiarizing a little bit, but give me some license. Fear is the border between the world we've always known and the world we have the power to create. Mind blown. Fear is the border between the world we've always known and the world we have the power to create. And unless you step over that border into the unknown, I guarantee you, you will not make progress on ED&I. You will be stuck doing all that performative stuff, which no one who cares about ED&I actually likes. It annoys the heck out of people who look like me. But you will get nowhere. And you will be here in 10 years' time at the Oceans Futures Conference saying, we really need to do something about inclusion. And you won't have moved. And the way to overcome fear is to take action. I need to wind it up now. I think I've run out of time, and I know you're very keen to hear Monty Halls. They'll probably make a much better job of it than I've just done. But I just wanted to leave you with one thought before I hand over, and that is this. Do you want your organization or your sector to shrivel into the palest of pale versions of itself? I'm suspecting the answer might be no. And the reason I ask that question is this. I'm not going to bore you with like the mountain of evidence that organizations that are further down the road towards equity, diversity, and inclusion are just better. They make better decisions, they're better at problem solving, they're better at innovation, they're better at pivoting towards changes in the market, they're just better, right? I'm not going to bore you with all that stuff. What I am going to do is highlight one key point, or one key piece of data that is emerging consistently in research that's out there. And that is about young people. Young people are increasingly making decisions about which professions, which organizations, which sectors they join based on their knowledge of those sectors' approaches to equity, diversity, and inclusion. It is a key factor driving where people join in terms of talent pipeline. Now, I'm not saying you will never have a young person joining your talent pipeline ever from the year 2027. What you won't have, or you will have a decreasing amount, is of the best of the best. Because the best of the best gets to choose who they work for, which sectors they join, which professions they join. And if you cannot consistently attract the best of the best, what then? What then? Thank you very much for listening. I will be at the reception. If anyone has any questions, please come and find me. If I'm standing on my own, for the love of Mike, please come and find me. But thank you very much for listening and being a wonderful audience. Thank you. Thank you.